Anyway, so today we're going to talk about a whole bunch of really cool adaptations and types of interaction, things like that. So it might be a cool opportunity to have like many of these types of interactions and types of evolutionary dynamics at a time. So we can have like a broad overview of these things. By the way, this is a harpy eagle. A friend of mine actually saw once. They're distributed throughout South America. They're just gigantic.
Biggest or second biggest bird?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, there's a friend of mine saw like a howler monkey on top of a tree, like doing those really bizarre vocalizations that they do. And then one of these harpy eagles just grabbed it by the head, and they started like like this, and then the harpy eagle like, oh. And then we're like, yeah, it's really impressive, really amazing critters. I've been trying to work with some people that are doing captive breeding. Captive breeding of these guys is just awesome because they have river islands and they cover the entire little island, and then they reduce some prey so they can learn how to forage because they were bred in captivity. So they'll release like some little pigs or something like so that they learn how to forage.
I think intelligent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're really scary though. Yeah, they can eat. Look at this. So these are the current hills in Australia. Really weird type of geology you can see from the mountains and the weird sort of sediments that you see there. These are some of the most ancient deposits or fossil deposits in the world. You can see from dates it's before the Cambrian. So these are pre-Cambrian types of fossils. This is what the Earth looked like back then. Really weird. And then you saw pretty much these very sort of boring types of things. Nothing particularly exciting. There's a lot of creativity from the artists. But one thing happened that seemed to have changed quite a bit the way that life is organized, which is the evolution of predation. Once you have predation, everything went crazy because basically predators were selected to find their prey. Predators were selected, prey were selected to evade predators, and that started a really huge arms race that we see today. So these were the ancient fossils, not particularly exciting, and then all of a sudden you had these things, really weird uh, uh, critters. Yeah, this is Alimalocara, my favorite. There's Opabinia, there's all sorts of really bizarre. Some people think that they're actually different phyla, so they're not even part of the phyla that we know today. Completely different types of experiments in the history of life. So predation seems to have been a really major force driving evolution in many, many different areas. There's this American scientist called Gary Vermeer. I think it's Gerard or something like that, but people call him Gary. Uh, he's been blind all his life, but he's actually a really good mollusk systematist, and he could pick up things that people wouldn't pick up because he would recognize other species by touch. And one of the really cool things that he would find just by touching these shells is that he could find traces or instances of predation, like sea stars trying to prey on mussels and things like that. And then he showed, for instance, he noticed that over evolutionary time, as you had more events of fossils with predation attempts and things like that. He started to see harder shells. So this whole evolutionary uh, uh, strategy that happened with these guys that people wouldn't pick up just by looking at them and just by touching, he was able to pick up with these really cool things. So predation is a really important uh, 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 driver of evolution of life. Uh, and then you have these the call this the Burgess Shale, which had some really fantastic fossils. This is up in Canada, and these are some of my favorites. Animal carrots. You can even get like they're almost like like toys that look like animal carrots, which is really cool. There's Elysogenia that people didn't even know which way was up. It was this or like that. People didn't even know how it was supposed to walk. Yeah, but I remember I don't know if I mentioned to you guys, but when I was a PhD student, I was working on a research project, and then so my PhD was on Boston University, and then there's this really famous Ben Thompson at Harvard, and then I just emailed them. It was like, listen, I'm working on this. Would you have some time to chat about this? He said, yeah, yeah, come over. And then we basically spent the whole afternoon just talking about evolution and things like this. Super fun. And then I started talking about the Cambrian explosion and British shale and all these weird fossils. And it was like, have you ever seen them? The British shale and fossils, like these fossils? No, of course not. You want to see them? They're right here. So if you just walk to the other room and just pull up the drawer, and they're all there. All these guys, all the normal cars, all the really bizarre trilobites and things like that, which was both really awesome but a bit underwhelming because they're some of them are really tiny. For some reason, in my head, I imagine them and exciting, but yeah, but still really cool. So, uh, a few definitions so that we can have a better understanding of what we were talking about. Um, a predator would be an animal that hunts, kills, and eats other animals for food. This is really important because this will differentiate between a predator and a scavenger, for instance. They will prey on another animal or another plant, but or the tridivore that will prey on another animal or plant, but the organism is going to be dead once it starts feeding on it. And the prey is a term used to describe organisms that predators kill for food. Uh, uh, I think I might have mentioned E.O. Wilson. You might have heard of him. Yeah, really interesting guy, and he was really good at like one of the best writers I've ever seen. And he had this really fun quote. I think I'm going to mention this at some point again, but he mentioned that he says that a parasite is a predator that feeds on prey in units of less than one. Just thought it was really fun. So it's eating like 0.001 of a prey. Uh, Notice that functionally, a seed harvester that feeds on seeds, ecologically, it's a seed predator. So you think, oh, it's a herbivore. No, actually, because it's eating and it's killing the entire plant. So functionally, it's a predator. So that's when you have a definition like this, then you can start seeing parallels that wouldn't see otherwise. By the way, this year in Cyprus, there's plenty of these ants in Cyprus. It was really fun. From Messer, pretty much everywhere. It was really fun. There's plenty of different strategies that people use, or the animals use for predation. One of them is what we call sit and wait predators. Basically, just sit and wait for the prey to come to you. Uh, what do you think is an advantage of being a sit and wait predator?
Smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Basically, you can just sit there and don't spend any energy. Just wait for the prey to come to you. What could be a disadvantage of that? Yeah. And notice that might be particularly problematic if you are an endotherm. Why is that? Sorry? Yeah, but in addition to that, yeah, basically imagine that you have a car that's on all the time, you're gonna run out of fuel really quickly. So this is a very unusual. I don't think there's any case that I know of a sitting wing predator, a mammal or a bird that is sitting wing predator. Usually you see this in frogs and snakes and bugs. Yeah, this a frog that you see quite a bit of, is really one of my favorite frogs, or what looks like really grumpy. And but their mouth is just gigantic, and will actually eat other frogs as well. Just sits there, and just yeah, really fun. And this is another one. They have these horns which are really cute. Yeah, really cool. Yeah, this is another. You see plenty of these snake species, the sitting predators, and they just hang out. Yeah, this is what they look like when they're hidden, and they just leave the tip of the tail. Looks like a worm or something like that.
It's like the ones we see in the ones on Planet Earth where the tail looks like a spider.
Yes. Yeah, just like that.
Birds coming in.
Exactly. But it won't go anywhere. It'll just sit there and just move the tail. And then you have active predators. You have jumping spiders. You have pretty much most predators. Most mammal and bird predators are active predators. Yeah, this is another example of a brown snake, which is a really uh, uh, aggressive predator. It's been an invasive species in some places. Yeah, and it basically can decimate child populations. This is interesting. Usually predators are less specialized. There's a parenthesis missing here. Than parasites. Why do you think that? So if you think about predators and parasites, usually predators are much less fussy. Yeah, but a parasite will have to survive as well.
The environment the parasite would have to adapt to would be.
Yeah, I think
Parasites usually go for the same specialized like certain species, aren't they? So certain, so like once you find one parasite, you only find on one like species.
But why can't a parasite? It would be great for a parasite to be able to attack many different types of hosts.
Because oftentimes parasites live on or in the host.
Yes.
So they have to not only they have to feed off it, but they have to be comfortable within the environment that it's got on.
Yes. And there's one more.
Because they're less complex organisms, so they've got less ability to.
Yeah, but would the complexity, the low complexity, be a consequence of or a cause in a sense? You know? But there's one important thing that's still missing. The parasites have to keep the host alive for a little bit at least. And so they have to be able to deal with and interact with the immune system of the host.
Deal with its defenses.
Yeah, so it can't just come in and just trash everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't be able to reproduce. So it has to keep the predator alive, and usually if you're gonna tweak with the environment, with the immune environment, with the physiology of the host, usually you can do that with many different types of hosts. So you have to be a bit more of a specialist in that sense. This is interesting. You have parasitoids. Have you ever heard of parasitoids?
Is that when like they lay the larvae inside them and they'll kind of eat it? So.
Yes. So the main difference between a parasite and a parasitoid is that a parasitoid usually has to kill the host. A parasite can just hang out indefinitely. Like some people have tapeworms and they don't even know that they have tapeworms, or some other types of parasites. But a parasitoid necessarily has to kill the prey. Yeah, this is like material for horror movies and things like that. But the main thing is that it has to kill the host in order to uh, finish the
So like
life
the
cycle.
host wasps, they'll paralyze it and then they'll put the larvae in it.
Yes, yeah, this is actually one of those cases. Each one of these is a pupa. So basically, a parasite went in, put some eggs, they developed inside the caterpillar, and then it came out. So these are all the pupae of the.
Would there be some parasites basically like the host that die because the parasites are keeping them alive?
Well, it shouldn't be. Well, that might happen sometimes when you have a host shift and the parasite goes to a host that's not particularly adapted to, then the host defenses and the parasite are sort of out of whack and they can overdo in a sense. It's something that happens to us as well. So, for instance, this happens quite a bit in parasites. When you have a host shift, for instance, the SIV, which is simian version of HIV, it's much less virulent. But then when it shifted to humans, because that was out of whack, they sort of became much more virulent. But the idea is that over time, it tends to become less and less virulent.
Are there any parasitoids that prey on humans?
No, not that I know of. Sometimes I feel it feels like it, but no. Yeah, like
That would be like alien.
yeah, exactly. Actually, I actually met the guy that did the special effects. He lives in Portal, Arizona, and he's really into ants. So because we were studying ants, and we went to his workshop, so I actually saw the materials that he used to the movie. Yeah, really cool guy. He did Raymond Dez his name. He does special effects for horror movies and things like that. Really cool. And it has really nice collection of ant colonies from everywhere. Really cool.
Watching one video like explaining talking in a biological way the like life cycle and how it's got like a half the life cycle is the big alien thing and then that lays the egg and then this half the life cycle is like the face sucker thing. It's like got two life cycles.
Yeah. Definitely have to have a complex life cycle. By the way, my first ever research project, which was a nightmare, was on parasitoids. Basically, I was studying these ants. They're called fire ants. They're distributed throughout Argentina and southern Brazil for the most part. They have a really guts thing. They're really fascinating animals, but yeah, they're not really a lot of fun to work with. At some point, I had like pustules in my hands from the stings. Yeah, it was really nasty. So they're really big invasive species. Um, so they colonized many different parts of the world, particularly North America, southern North America, and then some people from the University of Texas. I was between. I finished my degree and I was thinking about going to graduate school, and then they paid me to do some research on them on a parasitoid. So this is their distribution. Uh, uh, this is a bit. It became a little bit more stable, but basically most of southern U.S. Is been covered by these guys. They're really nasty. They'll feed on different types of not only other ant species, but they'll destroy animals that nest in the soil and things like that. Yeah, it's really bad. And then people have found out about these fire ant decapitating flies, which is really a fun name. Yeah, this is what they look like. And they have this really weird ovipositor. And basically the ants are going to be hanging out, and then it's going to come in. And they're going to lay their eggs here, and then the head is going to fall off, and the little fly is going to come out. Yeah, cool, isn't it? They are and they were like, listen, no one knows what happens because basically what we will do is we put a piece of tuna or something, and the ants are gonna start foraging, and then these flies are gonna show up, and the ants just go berserk. They just run for their lives, and the flies go laying the eggs, and then like they lay the eggs like in their necks, like inside the neck, and then the ants sort of get paralyzed.
Do the ants ever like get them before they do?
No, they don't even try. If they can, they'll try to kill it, but the fly is really agile. So basically, the ant is gonna stay there, and then slowly gonna start moving, and then it went back to colony, and then they were, oh, no one knows what happens inside the colony. Now we know what no one knows because it's super difficult to study that. But there's really interesting differences in behavior. So some of these flies, basically, they'll find an ant and then it's gonna start flying right in front of it, and then the ant's gonna start running like this, and then the fly is gonna like fly backwards, and then as soon as the ant is away from the other nestmates, then it's gonna lay the eggs. Some of these flies they just go poop, 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 parasitizing tons and tons of ants. So and then they wanted to know which fly would be best to use in biological control. It's I think nowadays they have a really successful program to do for biological control using these flies in the U.S. But and that's why if you want to do biological control, never pick predators, always pick parasitoids. There have been a few examples of people trying to do biological control using predators, and it's always a disaster. I don't know of a single example of a biological control that used predators that was successful. Usually the predators will eat everything, including native species. Sometimes they will even just eat the native species and leave the invasive species alone. Yeah, usually it's just a nightmare. So because of that thing that I mentioned before, that you have to have this fine tuning between the host and the parasite, usually you should always go for parasite.
Is that what we're going to be looking at when we go to Tenerife with the cats and the lizards?
Yes, there's going to be some interesting discussions about how can we protect a native species when we have different types of invasive species. What are the possible strategies that we
have to release the parasitoid that preys on
cat?
Lays an egg at the deck of a cat and it pops the head off.
Oh, the main problem with cats is that people start being a bit too emotional. Yeah. So in Tenerife, uh, uh, the researchers wanted to have like just a fence around the threatened lizard, and the cat people lobbied really strongly to prevent that from happening. Just bizarre, completely non irrational. Yeah, completely irrational. But yeah.
Cats.
I don't have anything against cats. I just don't think they should be.
Protected.
Yeah, or I don't like feral cats.
Has in Australia banned them from being out, like letting your cat out in the wild because you're damaging it?
Yeah, but you know how humans are.
And your cat's alive as well.
People have this emotional thing with some animals.
Yeah.
So people who like to protect bunnies but not mice.
Yeah.
And butterflies but not cockroaches.
Yeah.
Same people who think bears are cute and I think it's true as well.
Yeah, there's one of the Darwin Awards was a guy. One of the.
Just gonna shut down in a minute. Nancy, you're the computer killer.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just lost me over again.
Oh yeah. So let me tell you about my adventures with a. Basically, I had to have a queen right colony, which is a colony with a queen, and that took me ages because you have to dig them out, and then you have to ensure that they have a queen. But you have a colony with I don't know how many thousands of ants, and you have to make sure that they have a queen. These ants have something really fun, which is if you put them in a bucket and then you start dripping some water, then water level starts going up, and then they'll produce a raft. You see that? Yeah, basically it's a raft, and they put all the pupae and larvae as like buoys, But that's how you say it, by the way. It's
Buoys.
buoys, not boys.
Buoys.
Yeah, it's not like they have little children. You see what I mean? Yeah. So they use the pupae as buoys, and then they have these rafts. But if you're doing field work and then just doing your own thing, and they come to you, and when you notice you have like thousands of them around you, it's really, but so basically, okay, I got the colony. Now I have to have a nest where I can see the ants, and then it just wouldn't work. The ants would just come together, and I wouldn't see anything. And then I tried, I don't know how many different types of architecture until it finally worked.
You know the way some ants like, and if they notice like an ant's been infected with like a fungus or like an illness, they can detect some of them will detect it and they'll kind of get rid of them. So
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to see if the other ants would come on. I wanted to see if the other ants would recognize the parasite ants or things like that. But then, okay, then when I managed to find a nest that if I make it really shallow, then the ants wouldn't come. Yeah, okay. Then I had to mark them. How would you individually mark an ant?
Dye them.
Sorry?
Would you dye them?
I tried to use like just one hair of a paintbrush, and I would paint them with different color combinations. And then I painted like 30 ants during the entire morning. Then I was really proud of myself. And then I had lunch and I came back, they stripped off all the paint. Then I tried different paints, I tried different alternatives. The only alternative was to tie copper wire around their waist. So I had to do that. Yeah, then I had to, and then I had to anesthetize them. And then I tried low temperatures, and then as soon as you start manipulating them, they will come back to life. And then I'll kill them with light or something when I was tiny enough. And then I tried CO2. Then at the end, I used one of those, how do you call that? Those like embroidery things. Like I'll put in like a mesh, then put on top of the ant, and then it'll stick out the tip of the abdomen, and then I can do that. And then I wanted to, okay, now I'm finally gonna get results. Now, what happened is I would collect the flies in the field and bring to the lab to do the bioassays, and then I'll bring it to the lab. Just the humidity in the walls of the epiderm was enough for them to drown. And then I would collect 5, 6 flies. I would get to the lab. They would all be dead. And then when I got to the lab, then sometimes I would do. I'll do an experiment. Then I'll put in an arena the ants and the flies, and they'll just stay there. And they wouldn't do anything. And then one time I got desperate, brought the entire colony to the field. I disturbed some of the colonies in the field. The parasite would go to the field colony, but not to my colony. And then basically after 7 months of really hard work, I just gave up. And I had 0 results. So I want to be telling you everything about that. So, moral of the story is, if you come across problems with your dissertation, it can't be worse than that.
I thought you were going to say give up straight away.
No, like I kind of felt really sorry about myself. I would look at my hands with all those chills and things like that. Yeah.
When you made the wrap?
Sorry?
When they made the wrap, did they not like put the queen in the middle?
Yes. Yes.
So is that how you found it?
Yes. And actually, these are really cool ants because they have what is it? Probably knows that I can do 2 things at a time. Oh, you probably figured that by now. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. If you can, physicists love these ants because they actually, depending on the condition they work, they function as if they were liquid. because you can like drop them. Because that's one of the things that physicists love to do, like to model water droplets and things like that. That because it's not very regular. The timing between the drops is sort of unpredictable. It's almost like chaos theory. And you can do the same thing with the ants. You can start dripping them, and then it works like just physically it works just like a liquid, which is and they actually have like surface tension and things like that when they have do the rafts. Really cool. Okay, so predation is relatively simple. Basically, you just go there and try to find prey. Anti-predation strategies are much more complex and much more dynamic, and we're gonna see why. So the first one is pretty easy to understand. Camouflage. Basically, you try to blend your appearance. You're gonna try to blend that with a background environment. You see it here. Yeah. So this is relatively easy to understand. It's pretty trivial. This is one of my favorite people. His name is Henry Walter Bates. He was mates with Darwin and Wallace, and he spent uh, 11 years in the middle of the Amazon. So I wouldn't spend 11 years in the middle of the Amazon now. Can you imagine, like in the 1800s, to spend?
His immune system must be.
Yeah, exactly. But he came across tons and tons. He collected, discovered thousands of different species and things like that. But one of the things that he noticed was there are these butterflies that you can see from really far away. And he thought, well, if they're so conspicuous, how come they're not extinct yet? Because the predators could see them from really far away. Why don't they just go extinct? Because the predators ate them off. What do you think?
To do the colours that they are.
Yeah, but why are they so conspicuous? Why are the colors so conspicuous? Sorry? Mating, but warning of what? Yeah, somewhere. Maybe something. Don't eat me because you're gonna regret this.
I'm wondering whether there's patterns of eyes on them. It's making look like.
Yeah, but that's different, isn't it? Like if you have eyes, then the predator's gonna. This might be like an hour or something. I'm not gonna eat this. But here, it will be warning coloration, also known as episematism. So it's the use of a signal, especially a visual signal, of conspicuous markings or bright colors by an animal to warn predators that it's toxic or distasteful. How do you think that Bates tested that idea?
Locked them in a room with predators and see which ones you have.
Using that. Ate them.
You're joking.
Yeah. But the problem is that you can't just eat these guys. You have to eat the other ones as well. To know if they're particularly bad.
Give it a taste test. This one tastes like.
Yeah. So basically,
Darwin's made to eat everything.
yeah, and basically you have to eat them, and he showed that these are particularly bad.
Surely that's not a very scientific way of.
Why not?
Because like, yeah, he's a human being. What if like their predators are like birds or whatever? And obviously birds.
Well, what if it's a
Well,
primate? You're
yeah,
representative of a primate, and remember that the Amazon's got 50 different primate species.
So, were they toxic?
Sorry?
Were they toxic?
Yes.
Why?
And basically what happens with a lot of butterflies is that they don't even produce their own toxin. They'll eat a plant that has a toxin and they will detoxify it, incorporate it into their bodies. And so they use the plant chemicals. Sorry? Frogs do that with mice and ants as well. Basically the same type of reasoning. So they'll have alkaloids, different types of alkaloids like pyroresidinic alkaloids, cardiac glycosides, all sorts of nasty chemicals. Like in the case of the monarch butterflies, they have cardiac glycosides, and they lead to nausea, vomiting, visual disturbances, heart arrhythmias, and things like
How on earth did he last 11 months just going and eating toxic?
No, it was that was not the only thing that he did.
But like, I can't believe he managed to live that long just in the Amazon, just going around eating random things.
Well, one of my crossman was a master's student. He did a really a much nicer experiment. He found these spiders that had really gigantic webs, and he just took the butterflies and just threw them in. And then he knows, but whenever there was so like this, the spider would just cut the web open and throw it away. It wouldn't eat it. And sometimes, and then he tested. It was actually a science paper. He showed that the spider could taste a little bit, and this doesn't look good, and then he just dropped it. So basically, got a science paper just catching butterflies and throwing them.
Would that be like limited to the local spiders where you find them butterflies? Would like if you found a spider that would never bump into them in the wild, would they still know not to eat them?
Well, spiders are not particularly visual, but they can definitely taste a little bit. So you might not necessarily eat it, but they taste it a little bit, and then they can sort of know if they're. Because sometimes we're gonna get to that. Sometimes just looking at them might not be a good idea. You'll understand that in a minute. But yeah, aposematism usually it's one coloration, and the idea is that the predator will eat one and learn about that, and then we'll try to avoid that in the future. How many ants do you see here? 6. Any other guesses?
I want to say no.
None.
None.
There's no ants.
Count
the number of legs.
They're all spiders.
They're all spiders.
No, they're not.
Yeah, B doesn't very but you can see it's got some little legs.
But these only got 6 legs.
Which ones?
Actually,
No,
what's
no,
the-
no.
Oh, yeah,
No,
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 right,
no.
sorry, yeah. Wow.
That's really great.
3, 4, 5.
Wow. Look at that, that's amazing.
And oftentimes, like a spider like this will actually walk around with the first pair of legs, like up, like this, like an antenna. Pretend that it has an antenna. And then as soon as you try to catch it, it's gonna run away like a spider. Because ants tend to walk a little bit slower, and then you try to catch it. And the funny thing is that in the tropics, they're super common, but people don't recognize them because people think that's an ant. This is called myrmecomorphy.
They eat ants, do they?
They can eat ants, but they're just the main idea is that a bird or something like that will tend to avoid them.
What's the benefit of being an ant?
Ants tend to be the stinger. Ants tend to be social, so if you attack one, probably there's more around and things like that. But usually mandibles and stingers, those are good reason not to eat an ant. And usually their cuticle oftentimes is strong, so it's gonna be hard.
Spiders are a bit more squeaky.
Yeah. So this is super. And the funny thing is, sometimes you can actually recognize the ant species they look like. So this is a Cophila, which is the weaver ant. This is probably the tartana. Yeah, you can probably figure out the sometimes these appendices that look like a head.
Yeah.
They have them together looking like a head and things like that. Yeah.
Would they still use webs?
Yes. It's just like a regular spider. How about here? How many ants do you see here?
Probably dogs.
One is a mantis, isn't
Zero again. This is a cricket.
Cricket?
Yeah. This is a fly. This is a praying mantis. This is another spider. Yeah, I got you again. Actually, got a paper on a fly that looks like an ant. How about this? That's an ant. How about that?
No, actually. Ants.
Spider.
They're big antennas.
And look, you can actually see like the palps look like the mandibles.
Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah, this ant, well, you can see like the eyes. Yeah. Yeah, here you can see clearly the eyes.
You seen that the Canon photography competition this year, and the winning photos and post picture of an ant. Looks like
yeah. If you want to look up this guy, I think he's the best macro photographer I've ever seen. Really good. Called Alex Mild. He now he's a curator of entomology at the University of Texas, Austin. But I think he's just fantastic, and he'll take macro photographs. He'll usually use like 3 different flashes and things like that. Yeah. Oh, look at that. So this is what we call Batesian mimicry, named after Henry Walter Bates. Basically, you have a form of biological resemblance in which a noxious or dangerous organism, which is the model, grouped with a warning system, such as conspicuous coloration, is mimicked by a harmless organism, which is the mimic. And the mimic gains protection because predators mistake it for the model and leave it alone. So this is typical Batesian mimicry. You have to have a predator, a model, and a mimic. This is the fly that I studied. I'm actually the world's foremost authority on the behavior of an entire fly family called Ricardiidae, because I have 2 of the 3 papers. There's only 3 papers in the world on any behavior of a family. I got 2 of them. At some point, I had 100%. Like one guy's had to publish 1 paper.
You got pestered with emails and stuff about.
No one cares about that. But they're really cool flies. Yeah, so Batesian mimicry is a really interesting. There's some interesting paradoxes involving the evolution of mimicry, but I think it's a really cool adaptation.
So is Batesian mimicry specifically just for mimicry when they've got that noxious or dangerous?
Yeah, you have to have
for other sorts of mimicry.
Give me an example.
Like you've got that orchid which looks like a wasp, so that wasp would mate with it, so that they
No, but then the flower, the wasp is not particularly dangerous, so it's not a threat. So it wouldn't be.
So it's not this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is basically what you need. Okay? So you need a predator. The predator is going to learn how to avoid episematic prey, and then it's going to end up avoiding the mimic. Alright? Then this other dude that lived in southern Brazil, Chris Miller, he noticed something that was a little bit different. He was like, what if you have 2 episematic prey and they look like one another? Then they will double their protective capacity, wouldn't it? Because they'll have twice the learning experience for the predator. And this is actually what happens. We have many different butterflies that will, both of them are gonna mimic each other, and they're gonna have twice as much protection. Yeah, so basically here we have different examples of these are different species, but they look like one another. This is relatively common, particularly in Heliconis butterflies. So these types of butterflies that feed on passion fruit, they're really diverse in the tropics. And sometimes you're going to see even within a species, different populations, the 2 species are going to look like each other. So you're going to if you go to the Amazon, you go to one place, you're going to have Heliconis melpomene and Heliconis serrato. They're going to look the same. In another site, 100 kilometers down the road, they're going to be completely different from the previous location, but they're going to look like each other.
They learn to breed.
Yes. No, the 2 species, no. It's completely independent. There's no, in general, it evolves completely independently in both.
So there's no interaction.
No, there's no, like, we call that, intergression, which is genetic transfer of material between species. Yeah, usually it's not that. And then we have this really common in velvet ants. Velvet ants are really cool. They're not ants; they're actually wasps, but they have a really bad stinger. Like their sting is really, really bad. You can grab it with some tweezers, and you can actually hear they have stridulation, so they like they communicate with acoustic signals as well. So you go you can hear it in the ear, and you can see the stinger trying to sting the tweezers. Yeah, it's really nasty, really really bad. I think according to that crazy guy, what's his name? Eric Justin Schmidt, the guy that does the pain scale. This is way up in the pain scale. You heard of that guy, right? Yeah. So this is way up on the pain scale. I think just because they're able to inject tons of poison. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, how many species do you see here?
One.
Yeah. No, just making things up.